Today we're taking a look at by far the most insane looking Jordan 1s in a very long time, but it might just be exactly what we needed. Here we have the box. Now this is where collaborations get exciting, when they do something crazy and wild with the box, which is exactly what this pair does. This pretty much has zero resemblance to a regular Jordan 1 box that we're used to seeing. It's got a completely different style to where it actually just opens up instead of the lid just popping off, and obviously has completely different branding. You've got Summer 96 printed on the top with a bunch of different logos. You've also got Air Jordan text on the side, and obviously all of that is on top of the various different images that you have on the box itself. Either way, it gets even crazier when you pop the top. So let me show you guys today's pair of sneakers. It's the Air Jordan 1 Union Bephies Beauty Supply. Now, I will quickly mention while we have the box open, you do get an extra pair of laces which do come in their own box that is all over yellowish orange, just basically to match the rest of the box. Here we have the sneakers themselves, the very wild Air Jordan 1 Union. I guess they're calling these the woven ones. So if you didn't know, this pair of sneakers is actually a triple collaboration. Well, kind of. Chris Gibbs co-owns the brand Union with his wife Beth Birkett, but at the same time, Beth owns her own brand called Bephies Beauty Supply. So they brought all of this together to come up with a pair of sneakers that's design is very significant to them. But before we get too deep into all of that, let me give you guys some release details on this pair of sneakers. So Union actually just announced the release for this pair of shoes and the other pair of shoes that's going to drop alongside it, the Jordan 1 Elevate. Both of these are going to be dropping on August the 24th as an entire capsule. Now that Jordan 1 Elevate is going to come in a women's size run, whereas this pair of Jordan 1 Highs is going to be in men's sizes. However, a Nike sneakers app and wider release hasn't actually been announced, but I assume the Nike release will be just after the Union release, because these were speculated to have a release date for August the 26th. So that potentially could be the release date for the Nike sneakers app. Okay, so there's a few different inspirations and design details within this one pair of sneakers. And like I said, the theme of this sneaker is very significant to Chris Gibbs and his wife Beth. It's based off of the summer of '96, which is the year where Beth and Chris both first met. Now the sneaker itself actually starts off with a Jordan 1 High neutral gray base. And that's kind of similar to previous Union Jordan 1s that we've seen in the past, where they started off with a base colorway of a Jordan 1, like the black toes. But with this pair, that's really where what we're used to seeing kind of ends. Because wrapped around the entire sneaker is this giant woven stitch, basically separating the top and the bottom of the shoe. Now this woven stitching is directly taken from the Nike Footscape, a sneaker that I've never really had an aesthetic affinity to at all. Now this stitching actually kind of fits quite nicely on the side of the shoe. It makes it pretty flush and it fits with the panels relatively well. It's only really when you get to the forefront and the toe box of this pair of shoes where it starts to seem a little bit out of place and kind of changes the shape of the Jordan 1 in general. In fact, I kind of think that this woven stitching, just generally speaking, makes this shoe look extra long for some reason. Even though this pair of Jordan 1s is very different from the extremely iconic first two colorways that Union did, there is actually still a lot of DNA from those two sneakers in this pair of shoes. And one of the most obvious details is the stitching that wraps around the entire ankle area. This stitching comes in a teal color. You can also see around the back of that ankle area the BBS logo, which of course is for Bephies Beauty Beauty Supply. I always thought that the stitching detail was super cool because it kind of makes it look like some Frankenstein Jordan 1 low that was just, you know, they slapped a top onto it to make it a high. Now that stitching is also on the tongue, so it literally wraps around, and I guess you could kind of just chop it all off to make it a low if you really wanted to. I don't recommend it, but I'm sure some people will end up doing it. These also come out of the box laced in this two-toned color lacing, which starts with white and ends up being light gray at the top of the shoe. And that obviously matches all of the rest of the light gray accent colors that you find on here. You've got an exposed foam raw edge tongue with a gray Nike Air branding tag just kind of placed on the top of there as well. Now you obviously get the signature Union LA tag just placed right underneath that Jordan Wings logo, which will match those extra laces. And a really nice detail, which I personally think is one of my favorite aspects of this sneaker. So if you look around the sneaker, all of the raw leather edges are kind of colored in orange, which I think leans into that vintage aesthetic along with the kind of sailed out midsole, which just makes it look a little bit more distinguished or higher quality. And in terms of materials on this sneaker, it's a little bit of a mixed bag. So let's start off with the white leather, which is obviously the most prominent material that you're going to find on here. I would say it feels relatively nice. It's all over tumbled or very visibly tumbled, and it feels pretty soft and relatively nice. Now for the Nike swoosh, it comes in a very nice light gray soft feeling nubuck or suede material, but by far my least favorite material on this pair of shoes is up around the ankle collar. Now this, when I saw the images, I just thought was going to be a nice feeling suede, but it's not. It feels like some of the cheapest felt material that I've ever felt. It doesn't feel great at all. Now I get it, it's not a massive deal because it is just this tiny piece of material over here, but I would have much rather if they did just actually add some suede. Now all of the woven stitching that wraps around the sneaker does feel very, very durable. Like I don't think it's gonna unravel at any point, but it doesn't really do much for the structural integrity of this pair of shoes. Like it does feel like it's just a little bit weaker and just easier to move around and bend. It just feels slightly more flimsy. I can also imagine these things losing their shape very easily as well because of that stitching, so you might want to invest in a shoe tree just to kind of keep it a little bit more towards the regular Jordan 1 shape. I mean, this is just a couple presses away from looking a little bit weird and flat in that toe box area, which yeah, it's not my favorite look. But listen, I think that these are so different looking that it's actually something people are just excited for. Regular Jordan 1s are sitting on shelves now, or at the very least a lot easier to get your hands on in terms of price than they were a couple years ago. So to me, that clearly indicates that there's a Jordan 1 fatigue going on. So to have something like this come in that it is so incredibly different to a standard pair of Jordan 1s, I think people are pretty happy about it. I honestly think that this is a sneaker that just kind of grows on you. Like I remember people's reaction to this pair of shoes when it first came out. A lot of people had some pretty strong opinions of it, but as we're getting closer to the release, it's kind of settled down a little bit more, and I definitely expect these things to sell out very quickly. So honestly, if you were on the fence about this pair of shoes, I would kind of just recommend trying them out. Now for sizing, despite these things looking a lot longer than a regular pair of Jordan 1s, they do actually fit the same. So I personally went with my true size and they fit me just fine, so that's what I'm going to recommend to you guys. Overall, I think this is a pretty cool pair of shoes. Definitely different, and it's definitely going to take some getting used to. And I think the release of these things is actually going to be pretty interesting to see. So I guess I'll hand the question off to you guys. Do you think this pair of shoes is going to end up like the Union Jordan 1s, the original colorways, or is it going to end up being more similar to the Jordan 1 AJKOs that we saw more recently? Drop your thoughts down in the comment section and let me know what you think of these things. So hey, maybe you're interested in more standard pairs of Jordan 1s. Well, go check out the Jordan 1 Low Black Toe.